All right, we're good.
Okay, well, welcome to another one of our Meet the Candidate forums. Again, I'm Joel Ryan. I'm the Executive Director of the Head Start ECAP Association. We are a C3 membership-based organization whose members are the Head Start ECAP providers, the staff, and of course we represent the parents and the kids that are enrolled in the program. We've been doing these forums for the last few weeks. They last about 30 minutes. We have a set series of questions, and then we open it up for attendees afterwards if they'd like to do some follow-up questions or ask some other questions. And tonight, we're really fortunate. We have Representative Jesse Johnson's out in the Federal Way Legislative District running for re-election. We're glad that he's decided to join us tonight. And the way we've been starting these forums, Jesse, is that we've been just simply asking people to introduce themselves and to share a little bit about why they've decided to join a forum specific to children and families. So, and thanks again for joining us. I really do appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'll start by saying that I appreciate that the work that's happening with our young people and our families right now. I know it's a struggling time and challenging time for everyone. And although I'm not a parent yet, I've been an educator for 7 years. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, so I definitely can sympathize with what's happening. So first and foremost, I'm State Representative Jesse Johnson, and I guess I'll say, I grew up here in the 30th in Federal Way since I was 5 years old, and like I mentioned, I was the oldest of 4 kids, and my dad's a small business owner. My mom was in the Navy nearby. I graduated from Federal Way High School and went on to get my bachelor's in political science from the University of Washington, and master's in education from the University of Washington. I've worked in the high school setting as a career and college counselor, both at Garfield High School in Seattle and Highline High School in the Highline School District. And I've also worked for the district office in my present job right now in workforce planning and development. That's what I do during the day. So I do a recruitment of teachers, peer educators, school staff. I partner with principals and kind of coach them through how to have a strategic staffing model for their building. And so I've been doing that for about 4 years now. I ran for city council in 2017 and was able to beat a 2-term incumbent and served in the city council for 3 years in Federal Way, helping to put more of a focus on youth, getting dollars for youth violence prevention work, youth development work, partnering with organizations like Young Life, Federal Way Youth Action Team to help support young people in the juvenile justice system, and also was able to establish our first ever senior advisory commission to give seniors a voice, and did some pretty cool things there. So was appointed this past January from the city council to this state level when Christine Reeves ran for Congress. And I've been now in this position 10 months, and all my bills, I'm proud to say, this year we're focused on youth and families, focused on mental health for our young people and families. Was able to lead the effort on a bill to expand Medicaid for dental services for low-income families, and also help to support curriculum in environment and climate change. So I've been doing a lot of work around education. I'm hoping to be on the Education Committee and Human Services Committee, assuming I go back this year. And so that's my focus, and happy to answer any questions moving forward.
Great, thanks a lot. I'm going to turn it over. Yuval has been our MC for these forums. I'm going to turn it over to him.
Thanks, Joel. So the questions that we have for you today have been given out to some of the parents that are here, and they will help us ask the questions as we go through. But I will start you off with a warm-up question, which is, since our forum is focused on young children and families, what was your favorite children's book growing up and why?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I have a couple there. My first book I ever read to my parents was Sam and the Firefly. And I really enjoyed that. And they told me, I don't remember, but they told me I read it like 100 times and they got tired of it. So I guess I liked it. But One of my favorite children's book is Lillian Gets the Right to Vote. And it's a really cool book about a 95-year-old African-American woman who finally got the right to vote when she was 95 for President Obama. And they made it into a cartoon book. It's really, really cool book. It's only like 30 pages or less, picture book, but really nice for kids to hear her story in that way.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Good evening. First question, what is your definition of early learning?
That's a good question. I would say my definition, probably is to start with holistic approach to young kids' education. And I say the word holistic because I believe early learning includes not just obviously curriculum, teaching kids social and emotional skills, teaching kids obviously, things like how to read, but it's the holistic approach when it comes to childcare, nutrition. I always kind of I have this poster in my office, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I think, we have to, when we're talking about early learning, talk about safety psychologically, physically, mentally, emotionally, also talking about food and nutrition, talking about sleep, talking about mental health, and then on the way up to learning, because until you do those things or address those items, you can't get to learning. So I would say a holistic approach to education for young kids.
Thank you. Jessica?
Research shows that investment in comprehensive early childhood education pays off, particularly for disadvantaged children and families. ECAP is a high-quality, comprehensive early learning program that serves some of the most at-risk families. Do you support increasing ECAP funding? Why or why not?
I do support it. And as someone that went through the ECAP program as a young kid, I saw the benefits for myself, for my siblings, and for my parents. And I will start by saying I believe it's our paramount duty to fully fund early learning education because it provides the supports that are needed for students, families, and educators. And we really have a lack of affordable childcare and early education in our state. And if we are going to be a progressive state that is trying to keep our state moving forward, we're going to have to address that because a progressive state starts with healthy families, vibrant communities, and that starts with early education. And the early education needs to be culturally appropriate, multilingual, trauma-informed, all the things that our families needs. And so I would say, really trying to create that infrastructure of support when it comes to early learning to support all the needs of our students and families. One of my favorite lines that we say in Highline School District is we got to support families and students from cradle to career. And that starts with the cradle. It starts with knowing our students, knowing our families, knowing their strengths, and how to support them in an equitable way. So again, everything from technology, nutrition, resources, just that human love, I think. And that's really important. So I support anything early learning moving forward.
Thank you. April?
Childcare providers are some of the lowest paid workers, oftentimes making less than parking lot attendants and dog walkers, while families struggle to afford and find care. What will you do to make childcare more affordable for families while increasing wages and benefits for workers?
Mm-hmm. First, we have to acknowledge the fact that how important childcare is. I mean, we have seen in this pandemic a real impact in our economy because parents can't go back to work. They're at home with their kids and they're trying to work, some of them, and watch their kids, and it's really a challenge. And so until we address that, our economy is not going to get back to where it needs to go, and even better. And so, I'd say that we need to expand this idea of education, which obviously is constitutionally protected in our budget. If anything else goes away, education will be there. However, education does not address childcare. And I think we need to really address that as a legislature, as a state, and making that folded into this idea of education. And so what I'll do moving forward is to work with childcare providers to make sure that although we need safety regulations and protocols and guidelines, the regulations do not impact them from being able to have the childcare business as we move throughout this COVID pandemic and beyond COVID. So I'll do that. I think we really need to think about potentially deferring payroll taxes on childcare businesses until at least 2022, 2023, the next couple of years while we're going through this pandemic, and increase salaries. Make sure that it's a profession that not only should you have a passion for it, but you should also get paid well. And so making sure that those wages are increased. So those are just a couple of the things I would do. I have a lot of ideas around it, but I think we got to address those issues, because until we address it, we're not going to get our economy where it needs to be.
Jesse, can I interrupt Yuval and just ask a follow-up question? Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm the two things I'm curious about. One of them, because you kind of hit on this, is do you think early learning should be part of the basic ed definition? And what does that potentially look like? And then, since you have an education background, I'm curious, what are you seeing in terms of public education and some of the holes that probably been accelerated or heightened during this pandemic?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll start with your first question. I think it should be incorporated into basic education. And it's obviously early learning is much more than that too. I mean, when you talk about, I've been in a kindergarten classroom, I've been in a preschool before in Highline School District where I work, Valley View Early Learning Center there. And the critical social emotional skills that those educators need and those providers need is well beyond what just an everyday educator needs. It's support for the student, the family. It's really a entire framework of support, and it's also something that we don't talk about. That the reason why people can't access enough early education is because of poverty. It's because of lack of access, a lack of resources. It's because of our lack of addressing cultural differences and having an intercultural dialogue. Not enough early learning is in different languages, and so it prevents people from wanting to send their kids there. And so we need to provide dollars to address all these issues because it's so important. It sets kids up for success, sets the family up for success as well. I'll say for the second part of your question, what I've seen has been this first month of school has been frustrating. I talked to a mom in Federal Way about 2 weeks ago. She's a single mom, 3 kids. She had to lend out her phone to her kids to do their homework. And she couldn't use her phone for work. That shouldn't happen in Washington State, one of the biggest revenue states in the country. It just shouldn't happen. So I think one of the things we have to look at is the lack of access to broadband access. We need every single school district to be a one-on-one district where kids have laptops, increase digital equity in our districts. And so until we do that, we can't say, again, that we're a progressive state because we're not even providing basic needs during a pandemic. So I would just start with that. And then also, making sure that there's the social emotional mental health supports. I was glad that our legislature this year tackled that issue, got mental health counselors in schools, except for COVID hit, the veto came from the governor's office and mental health got axed. We have to make sure that gets back in the budget in 2021 and beyond that, because that's a real problem. And we need to make sure mental health is addressed as well.
Thank you. Jessica?
Only 5% of Washington State eligibility families receive home visiting from federal, state, and local funding, leaving many families underserved. What are your plans to support pregnant moms and families with newborn children? Are you going to work towards expanding policies around paid family leave, early ECAP, and home visiting?
Thank you, Jessica. That's a question I'm actually learning about from my seatmate, Senator Claire Wilson. She's, and my predecessor for that matter, Christine Riggs. They've talked a lot about paid family leave. I'm learning about it. I don't know as much about this issue, but I am, willing to learn. One of the things I do appreciate about the union I'm a part of, WEA, Washington Education Association, is really good benefits around if you go on leave, both maternal and paternal leave, which is really cool, paid throughout that time. We need to expand that for childcare providers, for early ed providers, and not even just for certificated roles, but for classified roles as well. We need to make sure that all of our educators, our frontline workers, essential workers have access to that. And so I would say starting this year, I would be more than happy. I've talked with colleagues about a bill to make any frontline worker have automatic paid family leave, automatic working tax credit, because they're on the front lines doing work that is putting their lives individually and their families in danger. And so we need to make sure that that happens, and our educators too, because of what they do, not only for our students and families, but for our economy. So we need to make sure that that happens this year.
Thank you. Prior to COVID-19, 1 in 11 children were homeless. Due to the pandemic, we have seen an increase in homeless children and families. What will you do to ensure children have a safe and stable housing?
Mm-hmm. This is one of the issues that I am most excited about, because we have a real opportunity to do some great things this year. As we know, homelessness is a public health crisis, but we really need to invest and deploy our resources wisely. Simply throwing money at the problem is not going to magically make it happen, but we need a strategic response from the state, the county, the local level, local cities and jurisdictions, all working together. And that's how we respond to this issue. I was excited while I was on the city council to be a part of the creation of the Fusion Family Shelter, where we partnered with local community-based organizations, churches, and the Fusion Shelter for Families will be opening in Federal Way next month in November. And it'll house 75 families for an entire year for free, wraparound services, food, nutrition, mental health, all included. And so I'm excited about that. And I think we need to really make sure that we're expanding that idea. I'm working on a bill right now to have, it's called a co-host program or a host home program. And so essentially, if you're a student in foster care in need of a home, or if you're a student experiencing homelessness, you would get assigned to a home where a homeowner could sign up, and if they want to house a student like we do with international students when they come over for college, but for our own students in our backyard that are experiencing homelessness, you will get a property tax credit to house a student, and we match it based off, obviously, cultural, language, linguistic barriers, different things like that, and they're matched to homes that make sense for the owner and for the student. And so I'm really excited about that bill this year. We also need to expand the Stable Homes Initiative across the state. We led that in Federal Way last year. So if you are a family or a young person on the brink of homelessness, you cannot get evicted because of lack of being able to pay. And we did that in Federal Way. I'm trying to make sure that that gets expanded across the state, especially in COVID times. So there's a lot of bills, a lot of synergy around this issue that I think we can address it this year.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Okay. What will you do to ensure every child has access to the best medical, mental health, and dental care?
Great question. Medical, I think one of the things we need to do, when I looked at the threshold for Medicaid, I think it's not high enough. And when I say that, I mean, if you're a considered quote unquote middle income in this country, you're nowhere near being able to live in a lot of the places across the country, especially King County, Seattle. I think the average, they say that the average person in King County makes around $80,000 a year. The average, what you should make to be able to live comfortably or live okay in King County is $115,000 a year. And so when we look at the threshold for Medicaid and Medicare, it's not high, it's not where it needs to be, it's too low. And so, I think we need to expand that. It's why this year I introduced the dental bill, House Bill, I believe it was 2905. if you want to look it up, but that's the bill that we did to expand that for low-income families. But we need to get it to middle-income families too. So, because my family, growing up, I was the oldest of four. We were considered middle income, but half the time we couldn't even buy groceries and we couldn't even barely pay the bills, but we were considered middle income. So we really need to look at that, and obviously have cost of living adjustments for wages too, so that people can afford healthcare and dental care. So I really think we need to do that. Obviously, mental health too is something that's tough because it's not included in a lot of people's healthcare benefits. When I first got married, we had marriage counseling, which is something that people should actually do. Everyone should probably get some level of counseling. It costs a lot of money. It's not included. Same with family counseling. Same with mental health needs. It's not included in our healthcare. So we need to make sure that that gets addressed this year as well.
Thank you. April?
Early learning is about 1% of the state's budget. In your opinion, is the state of Washington investing sufficiently in early childhood education?
No, because if we were, we wouldn't see the educational disparities that are along racial lines, along income inequality lines that we see. So there's not enough people being able to get their kids into early ed and into programs that help their family thrive. So I would say we're not doing enough, especially in the state that we live in the tech capital of the world, where, just this summer, actually, Amazon made 600% in profit, record profits, $750 billion in a summer, but they don't pay anything in taxes. Whereas the normal family in Washington state pays about 18% of their annual income in taxes. That's an issue. We have the most regressive tax code in the country. And so we need to start solving issues like that in order to fully fund the things that matter for our families.
I think that leads right into Joel's next question.
It does
true.
lead into my next question, which is, of course, the budget deficit. We're facing a pretty significant deficit in January. When you think about trying to close that deficit, are you thinking mostly to make cuts, or are you also open to progressive revenue? And what does that look like, if you are?
It's a question I keep getting, and conservative folks may not want to hear this, but I'll start. I think the good thing is our budget forecast looks much better than originally projected back in June, and that's a testament to our workforce, the worker in the state, getting our economy back on track. But it's also a testament to our healthcare professionals who have made, our state a safe enough place where consumers feel comfortable going back out, getting takeout, going to the grocery store, going to restaurants, going out and spending money in our economy. So that's good. But we must continue the effort of how do we put programs in place that are going to help our families so our economy stays on track. And so while also, while I think we are not, where we need to be, I think that we have an opportunity this year to approve new state revenue that will preserve the public services, the jobs, the health needs to keep our state moving forward. And it will not, cause harmful cuts. That austerity budget will cause harmful cuts that will negatively impact our community. So what I'm working on with colleagues is making sure that we have a budget that is balanced, but also brings in new sustainable revenue. So again, unless you're a millionaire or a billionaire, we'll probably be lowering your taxes. But if you are a millionaire or a billionaire, you'll probably see some increase in taxes if we have a capital gains tax, some level of an income tax, because again, we've seen record profits from corporations, and they're willing to work with us. They're willing to sit at the table, representatives from different corporations, and put something in place that makes sense for our state, that's pragmatic, but also addresses our budget crisis. And so I just don't think in a pandemic, corporations should have all of these loopholes to get out of taxes when small businesses are having to lay off employees, families are struggling, and services are getting cut. We need to actually be able to pay for the programs that I talked about. And to do that, we need to have state revenue that makes sense. And I think we're going to get there it's going to be a push and a pull. It's not going to come easy, but I do think we're going to get there this year.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
So now I'll quickly open up the floor to anybody who wants to ask a follow-up question. So in the interest of time, I just looked at it. We are about to hit the half-hour mark, so I will give you the opportunity to share any closing remarks.
Oh, wow. Well, I guess for closing, I'll say, we are experiencing a global health pandemic crisis that has now translated into economic uncertainty moving forward. It's translated into how are we going to safely reopen our schools? How are we going to address the issues that matter? And I'm committed to putting the needs of families and young people first. And I grew up in this community. Again, I deeply understand those needs. I've seen it working as an educator. I know that we need to develop a more inclusive economy to meet this new COVID reality. We need to develop stable housing, address homelessness, provide high quality early education and jobs. And that's what it's all about. We need bold action on these issues. So I'm excited to get back to work on them. Hopefully I get good news on November 3rd. So vote and vote early. And thank you for the opportunity tonight in the platform.
Cool. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. And Jesse too, we'll send you a link to this so you can use it whatever way you'd like. And then of course, we'll send it out to our much larger list and membership so they can get an opportunity to get to know you as well.